I was their dumpster. I used to think shame was personal, that it belonged to the person who made the mistake. But I learned quickly that shame is contagious, and some people are very good at spreading it without ever touching it themselves. They don't say, "I'm ashamed." They say, "You're the reason I'm ashamed." And somehow you start believing it. You start carrying the weight of someone else's moral failure, like it's your job to hold their guilt so they can stay comfortable. I was their dumpster. They threw their bad choices into my lap and called it compassion when I didn't throw it back. They dumped their anger into my mouth and expected me to swallow without choking. They dumped their secrets into my heart and expected it to stay clean because I was loyal. They dumped their shame into my soul and expected me to carry it as proof that I was good enough to be trusted. But the truth is, you can only carry so much before you start to rot. And I did. I started to feel heavy in a way that didn't make sense until I realized the heaviness wasn't mine, it was borrowed. It was borrowed shame, borrowed guilt, borrowed pain, and the borrowing wasn't mutual. They never returned the pieces. They stole from me. They never apologized for unloading. They never thanked me for the emotional labor. They just kept using me because I kept allowing it. And the worst part was that I didn't recognize it until I was already full. Until I started to feel like I was drowning in someone else's choices. I tried to be the kind of person who could handle everything. I wanted to be strong, I wanted to be reliable. But strength isn't the same as absorption. Strength is the ability to stand without taking on what isn't yours. I started noticing patterns, how their eyes changed when they were about to unload, how they framed it as trust when it was really a transfer of responsibility, how they made me feel like I was being ungrateful for not wanting to hold their mess. They made me feel like my boundaries were a betrayal. But boundaries are not betrayal, boundaries are survival. So I stopped being their dumpster, not dramatically, not with a speech. I just stopped answering when they reached for my shoulder like it was a trash can. I started saying no to now emotional garbage without explaining myself. And they reacted the way people react when they lose access to free labor. They called me cold, they called me selfish, they called me too sensitive. They didn't say, "You're not my therapist." They didn't say, "You're not my storage unit." They didn't say, "You can't carry my shame for me." They said the things that would make me doubt myself so I would go back to being available. But I didn't. I realized that if I kept taking their shame, I would never have room for my own life. I would never have room for my own joy, my own grief, my own truth. I would become a container with no lid, filled with other people's refuse until I forgot what clean felt like. So I chose a different kind of loyalty, not loyalty to their comfort, loyalty to my integrity. I told them silently at first and then out loud that I would not carry their shame anymore. I told myself that their discomfort was not my responsibility. I told myself that their bad choices didn't require my sacrifice. And the freedom that came after was not loud, it was subtle. It was a sensation of lightness returning to my chest like oxygen after a long time underwater. It was realizing that I could still love people without being their trash can. It was realizing that compassion is not the same as consent. I can be kind without being available for their self-destruction. I can be present without being used. I can hold space without becoming the space. And that's the real lesson. You are not a dumpster. You are not a container for someone else's shame. You are a person with your own life and your own story and your own right to be free.